Okay, we can begin the calls. I see the lights are on already. And this is Mae Brussell 375-3082 on Kazoo. Hello, you're on the air. Wait a minute. Can't hear you. You have to wait a second. Let's see what's on this board here. Hello? Can you talk louder, or maybe I don't hear you? Which volume is it? I drew the chart. That's... Which one? What do you... Rich is it?
Hang on a sec. Let me check.
Yeah, down. Isn't that down? Okay. Oh, this... Okay. I got it. Very okay. Now.
Got it?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, great.
Rich is here. Okay.
Okay, first,
Yeah.
Clarification on the reception for Christic Institute, Monday the 31st, starting at 6 p.m.
Yeah.
at the Mission Ranch Barn. It is not just restricted to people with a whole bunch of money to contribute. There's a $5 cover charge, and the flyer on it says that they hope that those who come will then, after finding out what is going on, be moved to contribute more. But they're not just trying to limit it to people with huge amounts of money necessarily.
No, the reason I mention it is I think if people are in circumstances where they really can't contribute, the purpose of these fundraisings when you go to Pebble Beach and to Mission Ranch is, when you're doing $40,000 a week, you really want to meet or be with people who can contribute. I mean, we all wish them well, and we can work very hard, but when there are big fundraisings where a lot of money is included in a certain situation, and I'm not going to give to that, I don't show up just to see the person.
Yeah, well,
there is a question of taste, of just leaving room for those who can and are able to do it. It sounds pretty nasty, but there are videotapes, and he will be here for lunch. You can use your own discretion. It's not like going to Monterey Fairgrounds where you have a guest. He's very popular, and there are a lot of people that wish him well, but it's not that kind of an atmosphere.
Exactly, but there is room for 200 people, and if somebody feels like they can only kick in 20, 40, or $100 or something like that, not to feel like they can, like they can't come.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So now the other thing on that is some very relevant information to the Christic suit has come out in the latest Covert Action Information Bulletin. In fact, it's one of the best ones they've ever put out. It's number 28, and I want to give the address for people who don't yet get the Covert Action Information Bulletin, because especially now with environmental, the Executive Intelligence Review being shut down, this is kind of like the top of the line.
Executive Intelligence Review isn't shut down. I get it every month.
I thought they grabbed all their...
No way. I get every month, and I get the newspaper every week.
Well, now wait a second. About 3 months ago, they moved in and confiscated their publishing.
I'm receiving it. You're not. So I'm telling you, it's continuing. I got 2 copies this week.
Well, they must have...
They've never just gone continuously. Go on. That's not the point.
That's fine. Yeah, my impression from the newscast was that they'd clobbered them and confiscated their publishing information and so forth.
Finish your point, then I'll go back to that subject.
Yeah, I'd like to find out what happened on that, because that was the report that was coming out at the time. Okay, at any rate, for Covert Action Information Bulletin, people who want to get that, it's P.O. Box 50272, Washington, D.C., 20004.
Yes.
And they have a phone number. It's 202-737-5317.
Well, the subscription is $15 a year?
I believe it comes out quarterly, so it'd be like $20 a year, but it's $5 per issue.
For listeners that don't know about this, Covert Action is one of the best publications that has consistently put out good material since 1981. Their last issue was so great, I called Washington and just said, bravo, I really am happy.
Yeah, and this one they've got a good amount of information on the CIA and drug traffic, a piece by Heinrich Kruger, who we haven't heard from in a while, one that wrote The Great Heroin Coup, on the Nugan Bank, a pretty good analysis on the history of chemical and biological warfare testing on native peoples, by the U.S. government, and
The thing is so massive, it's a wonderful issue.
yeah, they've got a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. The one before on the religious right was a real collector, too.
Yeah, they're just getting better and better. So at any rate, people should definitely, if they can only afford one publication on this sort of
a
thing.
single copy's $3, right?
A single copy's $5, but
okay.
it's worth it because you got a book worth of stuff,
I
and
know.
it's really condensed, and they give you all the references too, so you can pursue it in more detail.
In fact, it was so overwhelming. I thought, is this what people feel like when they hear World Watchers? One name per every word is a name, and they pack so much into it. I could see, just, it was really amazing, overwhelming.
Yeah, and for people that want to study the evidence on the biological warfare origins of the disease AIDS, the summary that they have in there this time is probably the best thing to come out under one cover on that, because it covers a lot of different evidence on that. Yeah,
and they even have material quoting John Judge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing
and
I
the
forgot to
higher
mention,
form of killing that we've had on the air for
they've got all the
2
references
years.
in there. They seem to be on all the same references we are, and quite a few that I never heard of.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Now, the other thing I forgot to mention on the Christic suit is, or on the luncheon and so forth, the reception for Danny Sheehan and the Christic Institute, is that the personnel with the new forum who are helping put this on are several of them are out of town, unfortunately, at the moment. So they're open to any assistance from World Watchers who want to help volunteer to get the word out.
Yeah, they badly need, because the announcement that Sheehan was coming here was just quite quick, and spontaneous, and these ladies take vacations in August, and we're totally handicapped. It's the hands of 1 or 2 people, so if anyone volunteer, give their number.
Yeah, okay. The lady who's coordinating most of the work on getting the information on the reception out is Peggy Jorgensen, and she's really got her hands full. She's doing a good job, but anybody that wants to help her out should give her a call at 625-3563, and she'll put you to work.
Yeah.
And in any case, anyone that you know, and those of you listening out there, anyone you know that should become politically aware if they're not already, this is the time. And as you said on the air, and that was very well taken, we are not going to get another chance.
This is it, don't you? For all the work you've done and I've done, don't you think this is really it?
Yeah, I think people really have to wake up. There is a war on, and you're either going to be a warrior or a victim.
Well,
and you
that's
don't have
why
any other choices.
I could see it, with Nancy and Ronnie and Reagan and Wright and Baker. This is a vicious fight.
Yeah.
This is a vicious fight in there right now.
Yeah. Now, there's one story. It's minor as far as its impact, but it's kind of significant as a symbol. And you talk a lot about these things that are symbolic of the attitude. I caught just the tag end of a radio story last week, and I haven't heard it mentioned anywhere else or even found it in a paper. And so I'm hoping maybe somebody caught the whole thing, because the city in which it occurred apparently was the beginning of the story just before I turned the radio on. And just very briefly, somebody ran a car somewhere in a downtown, ran a car up onto a sidewalk and killed 6 homeless people, and was charged, get this, with aggravated assault.
Oh, really?
Yes. Oh. Aggravated assault. Now, now, what that's supposed to be telling us about their attitude.
Well, I have the front page of a paper in Germany from 1933, and somebody in a car had run over a Jew, and it was just described as, pushing it aside. It wasn't a crime of any kind, the article said, because it was a Jew, and there was no charge.
Yeah, now that's the kind of thing that they're trying to...
And they printed it right in the paper, no charge, it was a Jew.
Yeah, but at any rate, if anybody caught the rest of that story, I'd be curious to see what city it is that's charging people who run over the homeless with aggravated assault, because that's pretty bizarre.
Okay, thanks a lot for calling.
Okay.
Now we have the number.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, if you want to help Peggy, 625-3563. I charged her last night. She was mailing out 300 letters yesterday, and I understand the phone isn't working too well at the new forum, and they're really swamped with work. Hello, you're on the air. Hello?
Oh, hi. Is this KUS? What is this?
Well, what do you want?
Do you have Pat McEnany on tonight?
No, there's jazz that follows this program.
Okay. Do you know what radio station he's on Monday night?
This isn't
What?
I'm sorry.
No,
this isn't a answering service for that kind of information.
Oh.
I'm very sorry. The name is familiar, but let me ask. Rich, is Pat McEnany on this station? Rich is here tonight, the station manager.
Okay, I know he's on Wednesday afternoon.
Well, is this Wednesday afternoon to you?
I didn't say that.
Okay, let me just find out. The name is familiar. Wait,
Uh-huh.
if Rich doesn't hear me, then Rich isn't in the other room.
All right.
He was in the other room working on some stuff. I've called back tomorrow, 375-7275. I don't have the program here, but that name is familiar.
Okay.
I really apologize.
All right,
Okay,
thank
try
you.
in the afternoon.
Okay,
Bye-bye. Okay, 375 7028. This is Mae Brussell, and I want you to call in and tell me what you're seeing and feeling and hearing. Hello, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, May. I just
Hi.
tuned you in. I wanted to remind people, that it was Ronald Reagan and not Jesse Jackson who honored the Nazis buried at Bitburg Cemetery and called them victims.
Oh, who said Jesse Jackson did it?
No, it was, well, they don't say that, but there's this charge of anti-Semitism against Jackson.
Oh, I know.
I think it's ridiculous.
It's terrible. Yeah, it was Reagan who honored them at Bitburg. You're absolutely right. And Jesse Jackson couldn't get away with anything like that. It's just amazing how people forget those stories and want to pin things, but that, again, is that inherent racism.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, listen, thanks for calling.
you're welcome.
Okay, bye-bye. Yeah, that is a problem. The media is so slanted towards knocking out people of different colors and so forth as candidates. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, May.
Yes.
Hi. Thanks for the update on Rudolph Hess. Did you hear on the news today that his son had a stroke or something?
No. No, I didn't hear that. Oh, my Lord. I guess he had a stroke because he said he didn't think his father would commit suicide.
Right. Well, I was listening to NPR before your show, and I thought I heard that. So I thought you may have noticed that.
That was
Also-
from the shock of losing the father he never touched or held or didn't see for 20 years, huh?
I suppose.
Yeah.
Also, did you say that, or some of your listeners might have inferred that Ari Neve was killed by Nazis?
I didn't say he was killed by Nazis. I said I have to look up the story of his death, but I believe
He was killed by the Irish National Liberation Army.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I remember he died. I said he was a British public servant who was murdered.
Right.
I didn't say who. No.
Right. Okay.
No,
Well,
the circumstances of his death, I didn't say. No, no. Everybody who's killed isn't by Nazis. That inference may be because I studied them so much. No, he was somebody in public office who was killed.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that up
Yeah.
because the inference might have
No,
been
no,
in the
no.
context of what
I
we were
didn't
talking
even
about.
hint that. I wouldn't even have thought it.
Okay.
Yeah.
One other thing is that you were talking about all these messages that are going out to Reagan. I noticed that along that same period, Sapphire had a column where he said that this Central American peace plan would have never happened if Ronald Reagan was alive.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I have so many articles I could only, in the 30, 40 minutes I shared with you, bring up a few. But if you read it carefully, like you're illustrating, isn't it horrendous?
It's really something. Yeah, you really did a good job of putting them all together.
Did I? Because
Yeah,
it's
I thought-
complicated. I hope I did okay in the short amount of time.
Oh, I think so. You can't hit them all, but I thought that was a particularly interesting one that I just came back to me when you were going through your litany there.
The Sapphire one?
Yeah, it
Ye-
wouldn't happen if he was still alive.
Yeah, well, some of the articles, if you think about it, now when some story comes, and I didn't even get time to get into the plane crash in Detroit,
Right.
that I think, if Dorothy Hunt went on a crash now, everyone would be more aware because since Watergate, we're much more educated about these things,
Well, your listeners are anyway.
Well, the world, the books and the writers and
Right.
people are really much more intelligent. And when that crash came, I have all the articles in chronological order, and they were coming down at the same time as Reagan's little incident, when he landed in Santa Barbara, is when the Detroit crash, and at first they said it was the wing, the engine blew out. And they said, no, it wasn't the engine. Then it said it was the way the wing flaps or something. No, it wasn't that. Then it was the windshield. No, it wasn't that. Then the relatives were told it was supposed to arrive at John Wayne Airport, which is where that
that's
helicopter landed. That was the destination, the John Wayne.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and then they were told that the first article said probers say blast is a mystery. Then they wouldn't give out the names of the passengers, and then they gave out all but 2 passengers and won't give their names.
Yes, that's right.
So I don't know,
And
following,
they said the pilots had disconnected the safety
yeah,
mechanism.
the wing flaps. So
Right.
I was taking all the articles of the Detroit crash in chronological order, the peace appeasement in that order, the Nixon overlaps, and trying to put them together in some way. Well, I hope it made sense.
Well, that was really illuminating, and that's what brought up some of the other things that I was thinking about too. So that's great.
Yeah, the sapphire. What was the words he said?
He said, "Well, I hope I get it right." But
Yeah.
He said that this would never have happened if Ronald Reagan was still alive.
Oh my God. What do you think about that marquee with his old movie?
That's really something I hadn't heard about. That.
Yeah, it was in the Wall Street Journal.
That's almost insidious in its subtleness, but you're right. That would go straight to him. He would get that right away.
Well, he mentioned it to the people in the motorcade with him, and you know the movie wasn't playing there.
No, it would seem odd, wouldn't it?
They had the name up there, but you know there probably isn't a copy of it around.
I'd never even heard of that movie.
Uh-huh. And you drive downtown, and there it is in Indiana. I mean,
Right.
who wouldn't get that message?
That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye. If any of you are seeing messages in the news, maybe you'll learn to open up your senses like I do, and then you pick up, or maybe you do already, pick up some of these messages. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, I just heard briefly tonight Hague in L.A.
Yes.
was wrapping it down and trying to put forward the position that the talk these last few days about potential meeting next month with Gorbachev and Reagan
Uh-huh.
in Washington. And Hague was, you know, this is the Soviets' use of propaganda to manipulate the president even further and
Yeah, because the president wants to go down as a man of peace.
Sure.
They're nervous.
And Hague's definitely trying to badmouth in an indirect way,
Uh-huh.
sort of move himself in there. I've been re-listening to John Judd's tape I had a friend make since I couldn't make it up to the city when he spoke a couple of weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
And I was wondering if you could help me out in terms of, he mentions two different points about the creation of the NSC. First, talking a lot about Hoover, Herbert Hoover, in 47 being a lot of the, I guess, I don't know if it's brain power, at least marshaling people who actually were involved in the creation of the NSC intelligence setup in 1947. But then he also mentions that when Galen comes over here with Alan Dulles' cooperation and collusion, that then he mentions Galen has a part in setting up the secret government network, and then goes back to set up NATO intelligence.
Yeah, but Hoover and Galen aren't separate.
So it is, they both participate in that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hoover is one of those people with Wild Bill Donovan and William and Alan Dulles and John Foster Dulles who brought Galen here. Because he's the man who owned billions of dollars of wealth in Russia when the Tsars kicked his investments out. Yeah.
Okay.
So it isn't separate. See, what they brought in was Herbert Hoover, who had the desire for World War III of the loopholes to overthrow countries. But Galen had the technology because he, as Hitler's intelligence expert between World War I and World War II, had perfected the art of illegally rearming Germany, which they weren't supposed to be doing, and letting the Freikorps, the death squads, wipe out the politicians while they appeared to be separate from the police and army, and they weren't, and later all merged but looked distanced. You see, so that Galen had the
Deniability.
experience. See, Hoover had the brains and the money
Right.
and the multinational corporations, but Galen had the blood and guts technology of the way they actually did it until enough people, 400 politicians were killed until Hitler was elected in 1933, and this is what we're getting here with no Democratic Party.
Right.
So it was a combination. Galen wouldn't be here if it weren't for Herbert Hoover.
But also Galen's experience just helped out so well.
Yeah, see, John has the same problem that I do, and he does it on maybe an hour tape, and I've been doing it for 17 years. It's hard to put all of this into 1 hour.
Absolutely. Tell me one last thing.
Yeah.
DISC, Defense Industrial Security Command,
Yes.
which Torbett talks so much about. Now, is that still existent today?
Yes, the Defense Industry Security Command is the agency that, it may have changed a letter or two, but the name came up not too long ago in the news. When we brought over the German scientists and began making the hydrogen bombs, atomic bombs,
Right.
and the missiles and the weapons
Space program.
okay, they needed a special security system
For TVA, right.
and for TVA, but to screen out the employees so that they'd have more security than if they were making the old-fashioned bombs.
Right.
So in order to screen out the Defense Department contracts on super-secret weapons, they had their own security system, which was coordinated with Jed Gruber's Division 5 of the FBI.
Right.
Internal security.
Internal
So there still is that security system
I see.
for the Defense Department for top secret that's different than the regular.
Does Webster wield most of the power connected with that?
Webster?
Well, no, actually, whoever is going to step into FBI directorship?
Well, Judge Sessions will have a hunk of the domestic intelligence, sure, and William Webster was the one who had the ab scam and sending the El Salvadorians down to the death squad.
Right.
He very quietly sits there, he's CIA director, and he and Sessions will have pretty much control of all the operations, yeah.
As opposed to something like the DIA?
Well, the Defense Intelligence Agency has other information and is operational also on activities, but they can use that secret, separate guard system if they want.
Right, I see.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, I'm so proud of you, World Watchers. You are really studying. A lot of you new listeners don't know what Torbit is or DISC, but a lot of you are really studying and listening to the tapes and studying history, and it makes me happy to realize that you are listening to these and to John Judge and David Emery and getting to know some of these facts pretty well. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, Mae. I want you to know I love you. You're doing
Oh.
great things.
Thank you.
Listen, I sent away and got the tape of Bo Greist,
Yes.
and I started listening to it, and they were praising that Congressman Dornan in Los Angeles.
Well, you have to, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, the question I'm asking is, if this Bo Greist has seen the light about the drug running, do you think it's possible he might see a little bit of light that not all the problems in the world are due to the Russians and communism?
Well, I suppose when I was talking with him and when I did a couple of radio shows with him, and I might have mentioned on the air, he said, you know, he had gone to appeal to George Bush, and I said, well, on the air here on World Watchers, I've been talking about Bush and drug connections and Nuganan Bank for the last 7 years. And he said, well, how did you know so much? And I said, well, the information is there, but if you knew me 7 years ago or 3 years ago, you would call me a communist. And I brought up the subject that you have to lose these labels because in order to protect yourself or your country, you have to stop putting people into these categories. And I don't know if he'll lose that far right. He's very disillusioned. You know, maybe he will lose the disillusionment of having to learn later than somebody who studies it without all these fears. I don't know. I don't know how much his mind will change.
Yeah, the guy who ran the show down there, the radio commentator, what's his name, Anthony
Oh, Hilder?
Hilder.
Next week I'll do some broadcasts about Anthony Hilder. His background is very close to the people who killed Robert Kennedy and John Kennedy.
Wow.
Yes, Anthony Hilder was a far right, and for the most part, now when they have conversation, and he was up at the House, when they talked about the trilaterals or the Council of Foreign Relations, I try to swing them to people like Reinhard Gehlen or Henry Kissinger, not as a Russian spy, as Bohr, but as a Nazi.
Mm-hmm.
But they're willing to learn now. They never would have sat with me years ago, and I've been very friendly with Anthony Hilder, and I do want to put on the air some of the background about him, but if they're willing to sit with me and I don't compromise what I say, and I'm not afraid to say it with them, and they're going through a learning process, they've been very much brainwashed by their upbringing. I was too, and I had to grow out of it. It's just as painful for me from what I learned to what I know now as it is for them for what they have yet to learn.
Well, gee, that's wonderful. It's really encouraging to hear that these guys really have an open mind and that they are willing to change when they see the evidence.
Yes, and
very
so
encouraging.
yeah, it is encouraging because this is what all of us have to do, is to change the spectacles that we've used to give us one view and just kind of zoom in on a lot of different areas and realize that there's one single answer to a lot of the problems, that there's a lot of layers to it, and that working together we can all do a lot more than if we fight each other as factions.
Right.
Okay, thanks for calling.
Thanks to you.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, yeah, I'll do more on Anthony Hilder. I didn't bring in the quotations and things of him, but I'll do it next week. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, Mae.
Hi.
I just wondered if you saw in, I think, last week's Monterey Herald, the anti-nuclear activist that was killed in a car wreck, Rebecca Plank,
Yeah.
an organizer of last year's nationwide student effort to get President Reagan to discuss nuclear weapons in a television forum died Saturday, in an automobile accident. She was 18.
Where's she from?
Says one of her endeavors was the Project National Forum organization at Milton Academy, the prestigious prep school she attended. She served on the steering committee for the group.
What paper are you reading from?
Monterey Herald.
Oh, I didn't see it. Go on.
She served on the steering committee for the group, which gathered more than 3,000 signatures calling for the White House and television networks to convene a forum on nuclear issues.
Is this another...
This is in Massachusetts, Mae.
What?
Weymouth, Massachusetts.
Oh, she was killed there?
This is where the article's byline.
Save it for me.
Okay.
Is this another Samantha Smith?
Yeah, it sure sounds like it. Plus today, Bayard Rustin died suddenly from a trip.
How old is he, though? Was he?
Well, he was 77, but the thing that killed him was the sudden attack of appendicitis after returning from Haiti.
Oh.
And they're starting to warn people not to go to Haiti because apparently the AIDS epidemic is rampant, is what they're telling the tourists. And anyway, it seemed rather sudden. He wasn't sick, in other words. He just suddenly died of a ruptured appendix. And then he went on to say that he had organized the great and successful March on Washington.
Oh, my. So there's quite a few people from our State Department and Foreign Service Congress who go on trips and come home and the trip was fatal.
Yeah.
It's just, this is an area, one of the last ones to be broken into about the death squads that this country has.
Right.
The thing that you see, and I'm seeing it, but you just have to add up too many people that are activists get these situations that happen, and I just believe, because there have been books and articles about the intent to do this to these people and the means of doing it, then why not do it? And all the opposition and the very active people there aren't many people like that, or Samantha Smith. They come along once in a while and have a lot of energy and they're young, and then they're not here anymore.
That's right.
That's terrible. Okay, thanks for calling.
You're welcome.
Okay. Oh, incidentally, save the copy of that article I mentioned. Mail it to me, and I'd like to see that or put that in my sad collection of peace activists who have untimely deaths. Hello, you're on the air.
Yes, I heard you once on a Nip Tuck interview, and somebody mentioned a group out of Atlanta, Georgia, Tom Bearden, and you kind of made a scoffing remark, and I was curious what you know of that group.
I did, made a remark.
They've come out with outrageous charges like Soviet weaponry is much more advanced than ours, and also things like Israel and South Africa have developed technology using neutron weaponry and so on that's more advanced. Essentially, the United States is on its knees right now before Russia.
Was this one from one of the peace bulletins I brought in?
It might have been mentioned before. It's something a Tom Bearden group. He put out a lot of different papers.
I don't remember having papers of his unless he was quoted in an article I was using.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. They've put out some rather outrageous claims about advanced technology that the United States didn't want to take advantage of.
Are they true or untrue?
Well, I don't know. It's Tesla's inventions reworked into weaponry, so who knows?
Yeah. No, I'm not really too much into weapons.
Well, I'm not either, but I thought if there was something technology-wise different that could be used, say, in place of nuclear power that has been suppressed also.
Yeah.
You see. They claim that the explosion, the nuclear explosion of the Russian power plant wasn't your normal nuclear explosion, that it was testing these new weapons.
Well, what they were going to do is to test something new when it happened.
Yeah, fifth-generation weapons, as Brezhnev calls them.
I believed it was a sabotage from the inside, from the Galen people inside, that caused all of this momentous, concern all over Europe that people would have cancer for the next 100 years because of the Russians did. And 10 people have been convicted for malfeasance there. Now, we don't know what's in their heads, whether it was meant to be that way.
It came from Rex Research, and they claim that, that's just one of their type of claims, that Russia is really much more ahead of us. That Khrushchev lost the Cuban Missile Crisis, but he immediately sank one of our subs
Yeah.
remotely and so on. I don't know.
Well, the weapons race is always a charge. This last week, they have missiles on tracks and trains, and we don't have that, and they have minesweepers, and we don't have that, and also the Pentagon pours this out because they want money for new contracts, so it's hard to tell.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. And every time there's an article like that, we get hysterical and go more into the trillions of dollars of debt saying, buy it, we don't have those, we need them. They've got them. Oh, yes, sir, we'll make them. And then we find out, no, they didn't really have them. Hello, you're on the air.
Yeah, very briefly on the previous call, there is some accurate information coming from Tom Bearden as far as the technical aspects of that advanced weaponry. However, his allegations that it all originates with the Soviet Union are a result of his being in the Defense Department himself.
Okay.
And, yeah, so there is some useful information, but it's being shrouded in disinformation as well.
Yeah.
And Rex Research just reprints the folios. They don't write the stuff.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Okay. Yeah, but when you're talking about an industry that's worth billions of dollars, it's hard to tell whether there is the need or whether they print that there is the need for these weapons. Hello, you're on the air.
I'll be real quick this week. There's the, speaking what the other two callers spoke about, I've attempted to look into the Tom Bearden and Tesla weapon stuff, and there may be something useful and interesting in there, but there is so much chaff that, as he said, you should be very careful about believing any of it, because I've looked at several of them, and I knew people who tried to build some of the simpler devices that Bearden says you can build, and they've been unable to do it. Dave Emery, this went back and forth on one step beyond once. But
Well, I don't touch it because I'm not that knowledgeable about weapons. That's out of my field.
well, anyway, that's all I wanted to say, so I'll let you go.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, I stick with the single bullet and not those complicated weapons, the assassination bullets. Incidentally, I want to announce, it's a little bit after the half hour, Kazoo's going to have a sock hop. Do you like to dance the music of the 50s and 60s? Saturday, August 29th is coming Saturday at 9 p.m. There will be a dance contest for the most outrageous socks, a full bar for people over 21, $3 at the door at the American Legion Hall, Jefferson. It's on Jefferson, way up at the top there, the end of the street. And the announcement from Kazoo says, come and dance, take your shoes off, dance in your socks. If you want more information, call 375-7275 during the day. That is next weekend, Saturday, August the 29th. And this is Mae Brussell, 375-7028, and it is Kazoo. If there are some things that you want to comment about the news of the week or books or articles you have read, the Monterey Institute is closed for 2 weeks, so there's no foreign movies at this time. That gives me time to get caught up on some filing of articles. And I suggest that many of you send for that covert action. A listener gave you the address. That has a lot of good material on chemical and biological warfare in this issue, and AIDS as a biological weapon. Covert Action, P.O. Box 50272, Washington, D.C. 20004, $15. There was a time when Covert Action said they wouldn't print anything that had to do with the Kennedy assassination or Jonestown. And then there was an article this month that referred to Jonestown, a quotation of John Judge. So maybe they'll ease themselves into the story of Guyana and Jonestown. It's a good magazine, and it's filled with a lot of information. It takes days or months to read. It is like a book-length issue. And it's put out by Philip Agee, who's in this country now, who's on his way to Spain, leaving again. And he's sort of the man behind getting Covert Action together. Now, do you have some questions or calls? As I said, it's 375-3082. This is Mae Brussell, and this is your chance to call and talk about some of the news. When the calls come in, we don't talk about some of the Iran-Contra. There's still a lot of that in the news. A story in Time magazine this week about Ollie North's commando teams. I'll take that in a minute. But meanwhile, I'll take your call. Hello? Hello?
Hello,
Yes?
May.
Yes.
Oh, you're a good woman.
How are you?
Oh, I'm fine.
Good.
And I'm anxious to see you and talk to you. And I'll let that go until tomorrow.
I have been over for, rush here to Kazoo and don't have time to come on the way to the station, I'll absolutely come sometime this week.
All right.
Okay? Visit with you?
Yes.
Okay.
Lovely.
For my listeners, that's Gina Linsky. She's the widow of Saul Alinsky, the labor leader who wrote so much, the labor organizer, who did so much, died here in Carmel in 1972. He passed away. I believe, Gene knows, I believe that he was had given some kind of a poison dart or whatever that caused his death, untimely death. That's how I met Gene a long time ago, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we talked about that. And then Jean shared with me letters she got from the Ku Klux Klan after Saul was dead with pictures of the Klan members. Remember that?
Yes.
Terrible letters listing the people that they claimed they had killed or wanted dead, and they had his name on the list, John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy. And he had a very interesting political career and died young, like a lot of political organizers, right?
Right.
Yeah. So how you been?
Great.
Okay.
So good to talk to
Yeah,
you.
I will, I promise. I'll come in this week and
All
visit
right.
you. Haven't seen you for a long time. I feel guilty. The Iran-Contra hearings were sort of getting me up at 6 in the morning. My mind is still sweeping from that experience.
Oh, but I'm glad you are following it all.
Yeah, well, it's hard to do. You let some things get behind, and to keep up with it, you do let things pass that you want to do. And one of them was to visit you more often. I apologize,
Oh,
but I will come.
I'm
See
so
you.
glad to talk to you.
Yeah, so you're listening to World Watchers, huh?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, you like it?
Love it.
Oh, good.
I'm right in there.
Oh, good. Okay, I'll come visit
Quite a vast audience.
you. Right there with the audience.
Yes.
Some night you might want to share stories about Saul, some of the things you've told me. Some nice little stories the public doesn't know about his work with the Vatican in Chicago.
Yes. That was exciting.
Yeah, some scoops with Paul Marcinkus, and he lived in Chicago and was a courier for the Vatican as a young Jewish boy growing up in Chicago, right?
Yes.
And they would deposit money overseas, and they'd use these young students, and that's the way the students got through college. I've never put that on the air, but I'll go over that with you and share some of that on the air. I think the listeners would like to know the tangled web of...
Oh, that's an interesting story.
Yeah.
It's a good story.
Yeah, and his trips to the Vatican.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thanks for calling.
Do.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was Gina Linsky, and we've shared a lot of stories that she's told me about Saul Alinsky. He's written a lot of books. He was a well-known labor organizer, worked with Cesar Chavez and Robert Kennedy, and was politically active in this country and fell the way of the political organizers in this country. Hello, you're on the air.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
I have a historical question. 20 years ago in England, I ran across a man who worked for the European branch of Dow Agrochemicals. He was the head of it. It was a man called Baron von Rippern, a German. And he impressed me very unfavorably, a very scary man. I just wondered if you knew anything about him.
Baron von Rippern?
Rippern, I believe, Rippern, he was the head of the European division of Dow Agrochemicals.
Del Agro?
Dow. D-O.
Oh, Dow Chemical.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Dow Chemical. Yeah. Oh, that's part of the, I believe Dow Chemical is Royal Dutch Shell. Prince Bernhard, who was in the Gestapo, the Waffen-SS, and formed the Bilderbergers. Dow Chemical is part of Royal Dutch Shell. So you met him in England?
Yeah, some 20-odd years ago, and a very unpleasant man. And I've often wondered, after hearing some of your programs, that he was a German, I think, not a Dutchman.
Yeah.
And he... a very scary individual, and I've been wondering about the guy for 20 years, and I just wondered if you had come across his name in any of your research.
Have you ever looked up, like, the board of directors, Dow Chemical, or ever pursued any of it?
No, I really haven't. It's just something that's sort of... I've only heard your program a couple of times, and you seem so knowledgeable about some of these characters from the aftermath of World War II.
Yeah, well, I have many, many books, but that name now, Prince Bernhard, Royal Dutch Shell, was not Dutch. He was a German, and he married Queen Juliana. He wasn't Dutch. He was a Nazi. Yeah. No, that name, now, in the world of synchronicity in my life, I'm writing down the name because it so often happens that many times a name comes up like that, and 2 days later I'll pull a book off the shelf and see that name. And that happens once in a while, quite often. So I'll concentrate on Ripon and see where in the scheme of things, but it doesn't ring a bell right now.
He was responsible, this was in the early 60s, I think, for setting up the English branch of Dow Agrochemicals International.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for calling. And as a new listener, I hope you keep listening. And I'm always anxious for the reaction of new listeners to see if they're enjoying tuning into this station. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, Mae.
Hi.
Could you repeat the the address for covert action?
Covert Action is P.O. Box 50272, Washington, D.C., 120004. Is that a lot of numbers? 12004, I guess.
12004.
Yeah. And I think the subscription is $15 a year. Issue 28 is the latest, but if you're going to subscribe, I suggest you get the one before, too, because that was on the Christian right, and that's a very good issue.
Okay, and the issue with the stuff on AIDS
Is number
issue
28.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mae.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, that's a good message to get out because there's a lot of valuable material, and there's no way that I can cover any or even a fraction of issues like that. Well, I can carry some of it. I don't say any of it. But the best thing I can do is turn you on to that material because with the short time we have, naturally we can't cover all those chapters, and there's so much material out there, and a lot of people are doing a lot of good work now, and it's up to the listening audience to read that material. The libraries don't carry Covert Action, which is a shame. They should. Now, it's 375-3082. Are there any more new listeners listening to World Watchers in the last month or so who want to call up and express their feelings or what they think about the program, having heard it for the first few times? And any suggestions of things that update on points that you've missed? I always refer to back broadcasts, or are you satisfied? Just taking it at this point and going forward, and each week learning a little bit more with references to the past always as they go on. That Hess story, Rudolph Hess story, was a long, convoluted story keeping this man in Spandau prison for so many years. And as I said last week, he wasn't in Germany during the war. He hadn't done anything against America, and yet he was the single prisoner kept until just last week when he passed away. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi, I haven't listened to your show for a while, but I was listening to it when you were doing a lot of the stuff about AIDS.
Uh-huh.
And I was wondering, I remember you said Fort Detrick, Maryland, they were kind of making the virus.
Yeah, they were trying to perfect a virus that whereby it could be used as a chemical weapon in warfare, biological warfare, but a disease that the immune system wouldn't respond to, that it would break down and not protect you. Yeah, that was at Fort Detrick, Maryland.
But did they want it to get out like it is now in the general population?
Well, it's getting to the blacks and Mexicans and Indians. That's where they wanted it. Africa, Haiti. I don't know what percentage of the whites will get it. Drug addicts, they wouldn't care about if they got it. How much of the general population is it spreading? I don't know. I don't know if it's out of control more than they wanted, or if it is just beginning to go where they wanted it.
Because it seems to me like, once you put something like that in, everyone is susceptible to it.
Well, everyone who mingles with a certain group, or crowd, if you know where to stay, you're not going to. If you wanted to get everyone in Africa and leave the minerals and oil and resources for the white empires, it'd be too obvious to just do everyone in Africa. So naturally, some white people, it's like blowing up an airplane with Dorothy Hunt. If you want one person of the CIA, sometimes you take the whole plane so it isn't so obvious.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I imagine, are going to get AIDS that didn't want it, such as those children that were enrolled in school in Florida today who got it through blood, hemophiliacs, but that makes it look like the blacks aren't singled out. For every few whites, there's going to be many more blacks, Mexicans, and Indians.
Yeah, well, maybe that's the way they planned it, but I really don't think it's going to be like that, because one white person who sleeps with one Mexican person or whoever, you don't, it's just one person can just transmit it to so many other people.
Yeah, but then the lesson is don't sleep with them. That's what they want to say.
Well, it's pretty strange.
It's pretty strange, and if the intent is to reduce the population of the Earth, the book Alternative 3 described that, where 80% of the population is superfluous and there's too much pollution creating this ozone in the atmosphere, and there's not enough houses, no homes provided and no food. They're combining the agribusinesses. The San Francisco Chronicle has a large article today where low-cost housing is losing out in San Francisco. If you have no provision for housing or education or for buying homes or for health, when health runs $1,000 a day for a person in the hospital, and AIDS is going to run into the billions, when you are not making provisions for people, it's perfectly obvious they don't mean the people to be here.
Yeah.
They're not making arrangements for people, for housing, for education. They're taking away education by making the prices prohibitive, and low-cost jobs in the summer that couldn't possibly give you a college education. And if you remove the necessities, and I mean the necessities, if you don't have a health plan, you don't have low-cost housing, as soon as we have all those things, then I'll believe that they don't intend to kill the mass of the people. But as long as we don't have those, I don't think they intend to have the people.
Yeah. Maybe.
Because if they're going to have people around, then why not the provisions for them?
Yeah.
We certainly have the technology and the money. And we're spending $3 million a day in the Gulf now. We could house every street person.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, it's like they just have a choice of guns or butter, and they always choose the guns.
That's right. So then they don't care what happens to the people.
Well, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But did the people vote when they could?
No, because the people are poisoned and conditioned from an early age to fear communism.
Yes.
And in schools, I work in the schools, and it's a farce because they learn to read and write, but they don't learn to think. And after 12 years, they're ready to go out and kill commies.
That's right.
So.
That's right. Any candidate that will kill a commie, they think represents their interests.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well, listen, it's a pretty sad situation. Yeah, I started with the AIDS. Are you listening now more often?
I had been listening, and lately I haven't because I've just been going through a lot of changes, but, I haven't had time.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I'd like listening.
well, get on course now. Just mark off the calendar on Mondays and just do it, because there are things that will be of interest to you and things that people should know, that what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for calling.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Okay, that's a listener, part-time listener. We have to get those New Year calendars all marked for Mondays, earmark it, and spend that time studying what's going on in this country. Hello, you're on the air.
Yes, hello.
Yeah.
In your conversation with the person just before, you mentioned they, simply just using the word they.
Yes, they don't
Could you
want.
identify them? Who is they?
The they that doesn't want housing or health or medical provisions, the they are a group of persons who have been in control of capital for centuries, actually, who have had one time castles, who have had empires. They say of the British Empire, the Roman Empire. Who are they that sent conquerors out to take native populations, to decimate them, to convert them to the way they should think or believe or pray or be killed? Each country and each society has its own they, but the one thing they have in common is that at the top, the mutual heads either fight each other or love each other at the same time, but have determined not to give away any more than they can make or inherit, and by any means possible, to control it as long as they can. If it's Central America, it'd be United Fruit Company that became United Brands. After World War II, it was the British American Canadian Corporation. If you get the book, The Last Hero, by Smith, it's on Wild Bill Donovan, and about page 600 or 500 at the end of the book, look in the index under BACC, British American Corporation, and it comes in paperback too, and it lists a group of corporations. When World War II was over, it was officially over May the 8th, 1945, and by May the 10th or so, 600 corporations had already been formed in anticipation of when the World War would be over, and they sent their agencies or businesses, such as Ford Motor Company, General Motors, the pharmaceuticals, the chemicals, the General Electric, IG Farben. They sent these corporations into countries all over the world where they maintain. They buy the press and maintain for purposes. If you wake up in the morning and read the stock report, the top 500 are some of the theys. And the thing they have in common is the pleasure of doing business without having to explain to the masses. They pick the candidates. They pick the electoral process that keeps their future enhanced in foundations for their children or family or trust funds. And it's a broad they, it isn't a one they, because the thing that they have in common is the enjoyment of wealth and the power that is accrued by it. They meet at the Bohemian Grove, they meet at the Harvard Club, at the Yale Clubs, at the Hoover Institute. They have a few things in common that they all agree upon.
Well, I know that you name names. Could you, would you have like a half a dozen names that you could think of off the top of your head?
Well, I would
might be considered among those.
Well, John J. McCloy, who's still alive, who was former head of Chase Manhattan Bank, who was on the Warren Commission, who designed the Pentagon, who worked with Earl Warren in rounding up the Japanese into internment camps in California, who decided, as I say, in the Warren Commission, the hearings, how much would come out on who killed John Kennedy, if anything. John J. McCloy is one of the old-timers, Herman Apps of the Deutsche Bank. These guys are in their late 80s. Apps was chairman of the Deutsche Bank. He was on the board of IG Farben, president. He's a top advisor to the Vatican. Pope John Paul II called him in when he had trouble with the Banco Ambrosiano. There's a long list. Henry Kissinger would be practically number one with Kissinger Associates. Henry Gonzalez in 1983 asked on the floor of Congress if the State Department is leased to Henry Kissinger. And he sits on the board of the Council of Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and the Bilderbergers. And is part of the Bohemian Grove. When he's out there in the summer, they play Hail to the Chief. He would be number one, or one of the very top that I mentioned, because he is part and parcel of all four of those organizations and was picked by David Rockefeller to go to Harvard and was handpicked by Nelson Rockefeller and David as part of the directors of Chase Manhattan, certainly one of the big theys. And it's that type of person who hits all those boards. The Spotlight magazine had an article just this week, it came yesterday, on the annual meeting of the Bilderberger. If you'd want, next week I'll bring in the description of the meeting. The Bilderberger group was formed in 1954, named after a hotel where they met, and the head of it was Prince Bernhard, the one I was talking about before, who married Queen Juliana. Bernhard was on the board of IG Farben, the German chemical multi corporation, and he was in the Waffen SS, and he married Juliana. And when the war was over, he sat there with her as the head of the Netherlands, and they formed the Bilderberger, and they meet every year in different countries and different places. They've been in Washington, and they just had a meeting this past month, I guess, and it's in the summer, and it's closed to the public, and they literally sit down, I guess, with globes and decide, well, this year it's Somalia and Fiji, and next year it's Palau, and, they choose their countries, and they go for them during the year. They mark off where the oils are, the resources, the minerals, and what's up for grabs, and what ships will be placed where, and then the meeting's adjourned. And that's where they do their naked peeing on trees and dancing in tutus at the Bohemian Grove. Every summer, this is where they have a ceremony for the burial of care. They don't have to worry about a thing for a few weeks as they trip through the trees there. And they meet in the summer. And then, as I said, it's the Council of Foreign Relations, the Trilateral, set up by Zbigniew Brzezinski and David Rockefeller, and Henry Kissinger, and the Bilderbergers, and the Hoover Institute is another one of the big days. They literally control all decisions of the major news media and who the press people are and who the candidates are.
One last thing, and I'm going to hang up and let you answer this on the air. Could you name a few of the best references that you think are the best on the KAL airline?
Somebody asked me that before, and I have a list of the books that are written. In all modesty, I still think my article on KAL, it's not on the technical part of the plane, but it's why it was shot down. I made a note and didn't do it of bringing the title of the books of the KAL. I'll do that like I did the books on Rudolph Hess tonight. I'll bring in next week the list of the KAL books and how you can obtain my article. And these are all available, I think, at the library, if not in paperback.
Great.
Okay, thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. Yeah, the question of they is vast. Open your Wall Street Journal or any paper tomorrow and see the stocks and the investments and the companies, and then once a year Fortune magazine has the 500, top 500, and Forbes magazine has the top 500. And I think if you just stick with those, you know who they are. They don't venture much farther than that. Well, I have about 1 minute. No, just a half a minute call. The lights on, I'll take a half a minute and then say good evening. The time is up. Hello?
Hi, you had mentioned earlier something I thought about hydrogen peroxide as a cure for AIDS. Was that correct?
A listener called in who's an expert. Let me take it next week because the time is up and I'm not an expert on it, but there is somebody who is, and so I'll give you the number next week and you can call him.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right.
Oh, yeah, we can't do that now. The time is up. Before I finish, I want to say again, the views expressed here are those of myself and do not necessarily reflect the views of Kazoo staff or board of directors. Thank you very much for listening to World Watchers. I'll be back with you next week for 2 more hours to share material with you and save articles that you think are interesting and some that I certainly have missed. Calls have come in on things that I've missed. And with all my papers, I read them pretty fast sometimes and sometimes just skip over them. So save those and we'll share those. Thank you very much. This is Mae Brussell, and I'll be back with you next week.